Hi guys. Now here in this section we will be looking into the taxonomy of the non-functional requirements. Now when I say taxonomy of the non-functional requirements, what is that? It's nothing but just a classification of the non-functional requirement. Now this is not defined anywhere. If you go to Google, you will not find out that okay, these are the kind. This is purely my observation, the way I look into things, or when as an architect you look into things. These are the easier things to remember. These are the most key things. If you just look into this, these are the items in general we as a business analyst or functional guys or non-functional people or the architects or the solution architects or the project managers, when we start looking into things, if we classify the NFRs into certain categories, then it make very easy for us to identify or keep remembering. While you are doing a technical design or when you are doing functional requirements, you can't remember every thing or the every component of it, so you classify that into 7 or 8 smaller sections and then you go deep into that. So that is how in this course I am going to talk about few of these items in details, so that while you are designing, what are the key things we generally, we generally we don't deal with hundreds and thousands of things every day, isn't it? It's more of a key things while you are designing. Whatever you are in an application architecture, you are in data architecture, you're in information technology architecture, where you're dealing with the information systems, well, what means the infrastructure area of it. You're dealing with the interoperability requirements, you're dealing with the gap analysis of business requirements. So when you are looking into those key components, if you start categorizing into these 8 sections, where you are looking into the user experience of the component, the availability of those applications or the business applications, the security of the applications, the reporting and the monitoring part, that also comes as a key thing, which is a non-functional requirements. It may be some of the reporting may be part of the functional requirements, definitely, but monitoring is not your functional requirements. But how do you handle that? The compatibility, you are in different browsers, whether this is compatible. What are the maintainability requirements? How will you maintain? Do you have a knowledge base where you will be looking into? Some of the people who has developed this product has gone away completely. Now somebody else will be maintaining those. How will you do that? What is the infrastructure? What are the disaster recovery things? What is the globalization standard? How you are going to do a supportability? So this is the key things I will say. If you cover this area, then you are good whenever you are designing any of the project or a bunch of project or an enterprise, where you are looking through the complete enterprise and started evaluating from one application to 100 application all together. If you just look at this taxonomy and start evaluating and start drilling down from here, it makes your life easier. Okay, so that is why I am saying in every section, when you are designing it, please remember these key things. Now, is user experience means what is this availability? Do I subcategorize this? Yes, you can drill down the security into authentication, authorization, and many other things, whatever is required for XCSS or SQL penetration, reporting, monitoring with error logging, auditing, anything you can break down. But just to remember few of them, I have documented few of the items. Let's see that, okay, in the next section. Now, what are the elements which you generally covered in the NFS? You will see these are the key elements which we normally keep. In the user experience, what are the things we generally want to cover? Is a performance, usability, disaster recovery, overload management. Now, disaster recovery can also come in the infrastructures. It can also come in any of the systems from the database viewpoints if you start looking at. But I'm just categorizing so that you can remember it easily. Now, what is availability? What is reliability? Inside that, compatibility, scalability, the security part of it, app security, corporate security, the compliance, the reporting of it, how the reporting requirements are there, what is monitoring, error logging, and audit comes into picture. So these are the elements you need to remember. Apart from that, there are other like compatibility itself can be a category, maintainability, infrastructure, and supportability can be a category. Now here you see the browser support, backward compatibility, HTTP status, handshake, maintainability, transferability, configurability, knowledge management, infrastructure, backup and recovery, housekeeping, supportability, browser support, and product vendor support. Now the problem is, once I have shown you this, and now when you are starting your design, can you remember this just like that? No, it's not possible for you to remember all the time. Okay, I'm thinking about compatibility, maintainability, infrastructure, supportability, everything at once. No. So how to look into that? I have again another solution for that. Now when you start looking, you start look into one particular category, and then you drill down in details of that. Now, because I have said you about all this, these are the key items which we will be covering. Most of the items we will be discussing in details, but how to remember these details, that is what I am going to now talk by taking an architecture, a real architecture diagrams from what I have shown you in the baseline architecture and the target architecture before. We will go and say that how will I look, what are the things basically I look into the application side of it. Now I am depicting it as an architecture. You can tell me that this is the application slice or the application view of your project, and based on that you start designing your non-functional requirements. It should be another part which you have to document as NFR, which is an non-architectural input to your system. To make the system stable in today's date, you have to definitely document this. Now how, what, and there are many other questions which will be coming in slowly, and that I will be talking about. Now when we are talking about the application architecture, you must, whenever you are designing an application or a database or any technological stack, if you take, you will start either by looking into the bid, where you will be taking the business, then you will be talking about the data, then you will be talking about the technology, and lastly you will be you will be also talking about the application, right? Now I'm starting from the application side. So in the application, so it will be easy for you to remember when you start from the application architecture. Okay. Now you look into your applications and start thinking what are the key things. Now here what I'm depicting, there is a client tier, there is a middle tier services, there is a persistence tier where the database and all those things will come, then the backend services where the data access layers is there, and then backend layer. Now this is the overall view of an application architecture. Now there can be many other ways you are uh, uh, defining your application, but I just want to give you a view of one slice. Okay. Now when you do the application, when you consider your application, the first thing comes into your mind will be the design and usability. So I have depicted that in the design and usability. Now how, whether this is only viewable by the laptop, desktop, whether it should be also visible in the mobile, whether it should be also visible in an iPad, whether it will be visible in many other bigger screen. So that is what you have to start thinking from the design and usability perspective, right? So that is what you start documenting about the usability and the design feature of your product or your project, and that is one of the NFR component you start. So when you are thinking about that, when you are sitting in the application architecture, now what is developer experience and productivity, which I have written in the top. Now you want the work to produce and maintain a positive experience for all the staffs who are working on the system, right? Anybody. Now the system architecture choice particularly impacts the development stuff, right? Now the choice of technology and tools also affect the development stuff. Now what is the action you have to take? You need to consider how the architecture, including the technology tools, are getting selected. Is it going to impact the developer? Now you sitting with the Node.js and Angular into the UI layer, you don't want to go back into the old technologies where JSF may be more heavyweight than what is available today. So those also consider as a non-architectural input or the NFRs. Okay. Now this maybe not make sense to uh, if assess, but you still need to assess and put it as a part of the NFRs. Okay, so it can be anything like that which comes into the NFR category. Now the next one is about the performance and the scalability part. We will come to the scalability, but let us also talk about now this application which is having so many things, which is definitely visible in the browser. What is the performance? Now performance are and scalability are the two important and related concern. Now performance is the ability of the system. This is the system we are talking about, right? It is the ability of the system to always run acceptably at any point in time. It should not go down. Now there can be many mission critical systems. A very small delay in the processing of data can be unacceptable. So you need to make sure that that sort of delays are not happening. And then what is scalability then? Scalability is the ability of the system to scale enormously with the increasing demand. For example, at peak times or as the system become more widely adopted, you can increase. So that's why I'm saying the performance and the scalability are very important. So what are the performance requirements for various part of the system, like user response time and the data throughput? So those sort of things we have to remember. So and then you start documenting this, such as number of concurrent users, the data volumes, these all, I mean, what you expect in a peak load. So somebody hitting this browser around 10,000 users at one time, what is the maximum volume of users you are expecting on the peak load, and how do you handle, is your system capable of handling that? So this kind of things you have to start writing, and especially when you're scaling up. If you have today, you have a system which can take 100 users at one point in time, but tomorrow if you have to grow it to 10,000, how will this system grow from 100 to 10,000? Is the scalability factor and the performance of system directly related. So when you finished articulating this kind of requirements, determine how to design and meet them and write it down. So this is how the peak scaling requirements will be documented, and you know from the beginning, while from the designing of the system, that what are the non-functional requirements you are going to cover. So apart from that, there is a reporting. You are going to report this, any kinds of error logging or tracing. How will you maintain? Are you going to take a Splunk like logging system, or put it and inject to trace the login? Are you going to audit? What is the monitoring? If you are putting Splunk for the error login, maybe monitoring can be also done through the Splunk. And it is not about assessing the technology solution. It is about assessing what the non-functional requirements are there for your system. What are the app security? Now, when we say app security, that security itself is a very big section which can be covered. Now from the app security viewpoint, as I said you, it can be authentication. You are going to the system, are you authenticated to go and penetrate into the system? Now after penetration into the system, are you authorized to see everything of that system? No. Say you are the super user, you are authenticated to see everything of the system, but me entering the same system, I will be seeing 5 items which are only available to me. Now in this particular system, as a super user, the authorization person who is entering this system is able to see the whole view of the system, but another person who is a visitor of this system will be able to see 2 or 3 items of the system. So that is what the authorization and the authentications are different from, and you need to take care of those. Is anybody able to break the system? have you done the penetration testing of this system? Now I will come to that in the QA section, but this is what you have to remember. Have you done the threat modeling of the system? Do you do the secure coding practices for this system? Are you protecting this system from cross-site scripting attacks? So those are the app security things which you start documenting in this particular section. Let's move to the next section.